Welcome to my art school in Florence. I can't believe it's my final week studying at the Florence Classical Arts Academy. These last few days feel like an end to a really huge chapter. I am in the midst of finishing my final artworks, trying to absorb every last lesson and reflecting on how much this experience has changed me as an artist. I'm Carly Renée, a visual artist from Australia, and this is the everyday life of a full-time artist, where I share the real side of my creative journey. In today's video, while I wrap up my time here in Florence, I'll be answering some of your most asked questions about studying art, finding your artistic direction, and what it's really like living and learning as a full-time artist. If there's something you'd love to know, leave it in a comment below and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Let's get started with one of the most common questions I get. How did I find this art school? I actually discovered the Florence Classical Arts Academy a little by chance. I was originally looking into another well-known school here, the Florence Academy of Art. They sound very similar, which has actually been around for 30 years and has such a strong reputation in the classical art world. I'm on my way to school. I've only got 1 week left, so today's Friday and then next week is the last week. So crazy. We're doing self-portraits for our last week. And this is the academy that my mentor Angus studied at in the 90s. This was where I initially planned to study, but at the time they didn't offer a short 3-month program that fit into my schedule. And Angus had always encouraged me to spend some time studying in Florence because the experience completely shaped his creative foundations. Welcome to my art school in Florence. I am painting a self-portrait today. We took the photo yesterday in this chair, so it's got some green tones, got some velvet. I thought I would reference this artwork that Lloyd has done behind me. He's done a master study. He isn't finished yet, but I really love the way this artwork is going. It's very brushy and expressive and also very realistic. Florence has been good so far. I'm pretty tired. We've only got 1 week left of our course here in Florence. I've done a little outline, just the basic shapes. I have my palette here. I'm going to try and keep it to a limited palette. I'm just going to get my paint out. We're going to start with titanium white, burnt umber, favorite brown, it's very warm. Yellow ochre, yellowy ivory color. I've got some paint still on my palette from yesterday. Cadmium deep red. I'm a big fan of painting with liquid. Might put a little bit of ultramarine blue out. This is a self-portrait. Dasha took this photo of me in this chair yesterday. So this chair is green, which isn't usually a color for me. We're gonna start with a wash. I think I'm gonna need this paintbrush, so I have to find a different brush. Question number 2, how did you find your accommodation? Honestly, accommodation was a bit of a headache. I ended up finding my place through Airbnb, but it definitely wasn't the easiest process. Florence can be really busy and all the accommodations fill up really quickly, especially in peak season and in the center of the city where I wanted to stay. So the school does actually have a list of recommended accommodation options nearby. So if you're planning to study here, I definitely suggest starting there first. It'll save you a lot of time and stress compared to figuring it all out on your own. Question number 3. This is one of the questions I get asked the most. How much does it actually cost to do something like this? Everyone's experience will be a little different depending on where you're from and how long you stay, but I'll be honest, it definitely is not a cheap adventure. For me, I spent around 40,000 AUD, which is roughly 23,000 euros for my 4-month stay. And that's not including tuition or flights. I probably could have done it for less, but this gives you a rough idea, especially if you're coming during peak season when everything is a little bit more expensive. The biggest expense by far was accommodation, followed by travel, art supplies, and general living costs. The Australian dollar also doesn't go very far in Europe at the moment, which makes a noticeable difference. But honestly, this was a big investment in my craft, and I worked really hard to make it happen. It's the kind of experience that completely changes how you see your work and deepens your understanding of what it means to live as an artist. And speaking of investing in my craft, while this experience was incredible, it definitely wasn't without its challenges. And I get asked a lot, what was the hardest part of this adventure, and also what was the best part? Honestly, the hardest part for me was finding my rhythm within the program. At times, I really struggled to cope with the routine and the structure. There were days that were emotionally intense for me, and some moments were really overwhelming, and I definitely had to push through a lot personally. But even with those challenges, teachers, I would absolutely do it again. The method we're learning at this school is called the construction method. It's incredibly unique and it's something that you can't really find at other art schools in Italy. It teaches full anatomy and structure in a way that lets you create from knowledge and imagination, not just from reference photos and live models. This approach has completely changed how I see my work and given me tools I'll use for my entire artistic career. So while parts of the journey were tough, the growth I've experienced and the skills I've gained make every difficult day worth it. But of course, for every challenge, there was an incredible high point, and honestly, there were so many moments that made all the struggles completely worth it. And the best part of this adventure has definitely been seeing my own growth in real time. Every day in the studio, I could feel my skills evolving, from understanding color temperature in a completely new way to being able to construct figures and portraits from imagination rather than just copying reference photos. I have absolutely loved standing in front of the old masters' works in the galleries, letting them guide me and inspire my own creations. Those moments were almost magical. It truly felt like I was absorbing centuries of history being made and translating it into my own artistic vision. And then on a more personal level, the independence of living and creating in a new country, learning to navigate Florence and pushing myself out of my comfort zone every single day, that combination of growth, challenge, and inspiration is something I'll never forget. Every painting I completed here feels like a milestone, not just in my art, but in how I see myself as an artist. Question number 5. Do you have to buy a lot of art supplies for art school, or do you get an art kit? And the answer is definitely not. We did not get an art kit, which would have been great if the basics were supplied, even just things like boards and palettes, or even just paper towel, the kind of stuff you can't really take home with you and that is really handy and bulky. You are responsible for getting everything yourself. You can either bring supplies from home or you can buy them in Florence. Looking back, I do wish there had been a little bit more guidance and a few more things provided by the school. This taught me a lot about planning ahead and being resourceful and really thinking through what I need as a working artist. Speaking of art supplies, one question I get a lot is the paints themselves. And so that leads me into question number 6. What colors are used at the academy and why? To be honest, each professor has a different repertoire of paints that they like to teach with and colors that they love to fall back on. And personally, as an artist, I love to use a limited palette. I'm a big fan of Zorn and the Zorn palette because I just love to keep things simple. I don't like to overcomplicate things, especially techniques, but I just felt like all the professors in this course used an insane amount of colors. I went from having about 5 or 6 colors on my palette to having about 15 colors at one time, and the reasoning behind each color and why it was on my palette was sort of starting to make sense by the end of the course. But I probably wouldn't use that many colors going forward. On top of that, the teachers do take you through the colors and explain how they work, but it definitely takes a little time to get used to. Once you start experimenting though, you really begin to see how each pigment interacts, and it's fascinating to understand the reasoning behind the color choices in classical painting. So now that we've covered all the practical stuff, supplies, paints, and adapting to a new system, I get asked a lot about the bigger picture. What has all of this investment in yourself actually brought you? Honestly, I would still do it all over again. It was by far the hardest thing I have ever done, but it was also one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. In terms of what it's brought me as an investment, I'd say that it really refined my taste and gave me clarity for my next collection. And just being here in Florence, absorbing all of the art, the culture, and the atmosphere has helped me recalibrate where I want to go as an artist, and that perspective truly is invaluable. It's not just about improving my technique, it's about learning how I want to see and create and express myself. And that is something you really can't put a price on. This is what the rest of the class are doing. I'm actually obsessed with this. It looks easy, but it's actually really hard. Go Lloyd. And finally, one of the questions I often get is, if you could do it all again, what would you do differently? And I think I addressed this a little bit in my last video in terms of practically being in Florence and what I would do differently in terms of planning and organizing my trip. But there are definitely a few other things I'd do differently now that I know what I know. At the same time, I'm really trying to take my experience for what it was and focus on the positive. The thing that I have to keep remembering is that I didn't just go to Italy for a nice little vacation where I got to sit back and relax. It was a working holiday for me, and I had a very specific goal when going there, and I had to make sure that I achieved that so that all of this would be worth it. What made all of that even harder is that my whole support system was on the other side of the world in a different time zone. So I'm giving myself a lot of grace for the fact that I had a hard time adjusting.
Oh, that's wicked.
You like it?
Yeah, it's cool.
Is that what I look like?
It looks like you.
Is my mouth doing that? Oh my gosh.
So what are you thinking, taking time?
The yellow?
Yeah, yellow ochre for the yellow. White, yellow ochre, and a little bit of the black, just like cool it down.
Oh, okay. Black. I didn't realize he used ivory.
Yeah, he uses it like basically as like a blue.
Vermilion red, did you say?
Vermilion, yeah. More like cool, like kind of crimson.
One thing that I wish went a little bit differently was the school schedule, and I feel like that would have made a huge difference for me. And for example, on our first orientation day, it was pouring rain and I wasn't super confident with riding my bike to school yet, as I didn't quite know the way, and so I decided to get a taxi to school, which ended up being about 70 euros. But I did it so that I could get there by 9:30, and when I got there, we did a very quick orientation, and then I was basically told to wait until 1 p.m. as that's when our first class started. So I raced to school just to be told to wait for hours, and I basically wasted a whole day where I felt like I could have been doing literally anything else in Italy. I just felt like there was so many instances where the school just wasted our time and didn't organize things properly, and across the board, pretty much any student would tell you that. So that's one thing that I wish could have been done differently, but that was truly out of my control. So.
How is gray?
I'm not really sure how to mix this color.
This color is more green, but also it depends if it should be more bright.
Yes.
Or light with stop.
Okay, that's good. I hope that sharing my experience has given you some insight into what it's really like to study classical art in Florence. The highs, the lows, and everything in between. Studying abroad was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding. Every struggle, every technique, and every moment of growth has helped shape me as an artist and clarified where I want to go next. If you're thinking about taking a similar leap, my biggest advice would be to invest in yourself, embrace the challenges, and stay open to everything you'll learn along the way. It's not always easy, but it is completely worth it. If you have any more questions about studying abroad, art school, or just being a full-time artist, leave them in the comments below. I have a couple more videos coming out from my Florence trip, as the last week at art school was pretty packed. So I still have a couple more videos to go, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions as I can. On another note, some of you will be aware that a couple of years ago I did some drawing courses on how to draw a realistic tiger and the ultimate charcoal techniques course. I literally poured everything I know into these courses, and I'm very excited to relaunch them very soon. I have taken them down off my current hosting platform, and I'm very excited to be relaunching them very soon on my own website, www.carlyrenee.co. And as well as that, I will be releasing a brand new course on painting the figure in black and white, and it's been highly requested, so stay tuned for those things. And if you love this video, make sure that you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Getting this home in the basket was pretty sketchy. It's so heavy.